go to draft night, you get picked first round, taken by Philly. Again, I feel like that's like a dream route. Like you go to a great basketball school like Syracuse, you go to a great sports city, period, like Philadelphia, and then your first night in the NBA, go off against Miami Heat. Was it 22 points, 12 assists, 7 boards, 9 steals?
Yep.
You went like 4 for 6 from 3. What was that experience like of like my first night in the NBA? Like you put yourself on the spotlight and like told everyone you're here.
Yeah, I mean, it was surreal. Like, I mean, I didn't go into the game expecting that. But I was confident. I was so happy to finally play a game. Like it was my first time in the NBA, going through an NBA training camp. That's when training camps were like for real. It wasn't like nowadays where it's like, all right, we got 1-2 a day and the rest we're just going to relax. No, like these were 4 days, 2 a days, like picking up full court practices and, we're going hard in practice. We had a young team. Brett Brown was a new coach. Like we had dog days. So I was like, man, finally the game has come. Like we get to play a real game. So I didn't know what to expect. I was just going in there and just flowing. And, obviously, it turned out real well. And I was telling all my homies that, like, man, I think we had like Miami Heat, and then we had Chicago, then we had Washington with John Wall, we had San Antonio with Tony Parker, and like, they were like, man, you got a tough 5 games. And I was like, I'm about to kill.
Was that like an out-of-body experience at that point, 100%, though?
100%.
It was everything you were doing in night one. Like, everything. You were the best player on the floor. And it was LeBron James on that floor, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Was that like an out-of-body experience that night?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I was, like I said, I didn't know, I just wanted to win the game. Like we were just, obviously the game started getting fun. It was close. The crowd was going crazy. We're in the city of Philadelphia, first game against the champs the year before. My parents are in the crowd. They're sitting courtside. So, everything was just, it was a night that, I'll never forget.
And your whole rookie year, I mean, we could go through all the moments. Average 16, 6, and 6, won rookie of the year. What was that run like? And what was that like you didn't do it just for one night. You were able to do it for an entire season. And again, like have that confidence of being in the NBA and performing at that level.
Yeah, obviously, I had the ball in my hands a lot. I was able to be successful on the floor. It was great. It was a competitive, thing, of trying to win Rookie of the Year. I remember it was just a goal of mine that I wanted. Even, since I got drafted, I was like, man, I'm gonna have a great opportunity. And not many people thought I could win it,
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But, I had confidence in myself. I was like, I got a chance. I just got to go take it.
And yeah, for not many people to think you would win it, count you out on that. And I know there's like the knocks of like whatever that draft year was. And it's the same thing we're hearing right now for this draft that just came through, right? They say it's like a down year draft. Rookie of the year is rookie of the year. Like, I don't care about that. And it's also what you did with your career of like 9 seasons in the NBA. Like, that's hard. People think, it's a given at this point. When you look back on your career, like what sticks with you the most? Are you most proud of?
I think my perseverance. I went through a lot of things that, people don't know. I went through a lot of injuries. I probably had like 5, 6 surgeries. Coming back from each one of those, going ups and downs, playing, then not playing, being in, being out of the rotation, start of the season, being out of the rotation, keeping my mind level to, be patient and work my way into the rotation. So, I think my perseverance was something that, I'm super proud of. I think that there's a lot of guys who, when things don't start going their way, they kind of just collapse and they're like, you know what, if I can't play this way, if I can't do the things that I want to do on the court, then I don't want to be here, or they check out. And I think a part of me was, okay, maybe I don't love my role in this team, but I'm going to play that role as best as I can to, maybe get some more time so that I could do things that I want to do on the court, right? Like, so I always tried to, they call it play the system or a little bit, but you know what I mean? I've always was trying to play the system, trying to get in the coach's ear and be like, hey, what do you need from me so I can get on the court, right? And I think that's something that is a lesson that's hard to learn from a lot of guys. And some guys go through that and they're like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going overseas and I'm, playing my game. And then the guys that are able to be like, adapt, they make a long career for themselves.
And that jumped out to me looking at like just your stats throughout the years. Your minutes never really dipped that low. Like you were always a contributor, especially your first 5 years in the league, like double-digit scorer, around 5 assists a game, around 5, 6 rebounds a game you were averaging. But how tough was that with what you did in Philly, and then I think a year and a half in, they just traded you to Milwaukee? Was that something, again, you were very young, of like, what's going on?
Yeah, that was tough for me. That was hard. I didn't understand it. I was always part of the plans in Philly, even when I didn't necessarily ask to be in meetings and to contribute my opinion when I was asked. I think it was hard for me. I didn't understand why. I never felt the feeling of being traded, kind of that betrayal of what that was like. So yeah, no, it was tough. It was an experience that I had to go through, as a basically as a kid. So it was a tough thing that still don't understand. I don't try to understand it. It is what it is. It's the name of the game. So but everything happens for a reason, and I just kind of eventually I had to take it in stride and move on.
And you did, and it was again like 2 seasons in Milwaukee. What was that like? Was it again a reset of your game, a reset of your role? Because you go from being what you were in Philly to now you're playing with Jabari Parker and Giannis when you were there. And then also talk about systems, playing for a whole new head coach and Jason Kidd, who probably had a whole different approach to the game and everything.
Right. It took me some time to adjust. We made the playoffs, one year, and we did our thing. We lost to Chicago, but it was a great experience. We were a young team. It kind of set the core for Milwaukee, right? You know what I mean? Though I don't think if they didn't go through those moments, Giannis being a young guy going in the playoffs, getting his butt kicked, Chris, Middleton, same thing, right? Like, that eventually turns into, them winning a championship, right? And going through those tough moments, was probably able to help them, going through tough moments, in the playoffs when they did end up winning it. So it was cool, man. It was a great experience, the playoff atmosphere. Totally, Milwaukee went from, when we played home games against Chicago, it felt like we were playing away games to, what they are now, right?
Yeah.
So it was a great experience overall.
Were there any nights when you're playing with Milwaukee, you're looking at him like, this kid is like raw, but he's good and he's going to be special?
Yeah, man. It was like, I would watch him play, and there would be like 5-6 moments in the game where you're like, whoa, like if he can do that 12, 13 times a game, and then that turns into 20 times a game, like he's going to be unstoppable, right? And, you'd get those little moments and be like, man, like that's pure talent right there. And then over the years, as he kept working and as he kept progressing, his body filled out, his body caught up to his skill, and it was over then.
We always know like Giannis is one of the biggest competitors. Like will run through any wall that is in front of him, just wants to win. Do you have any story from your time with Giannis where like that's like the real deal? What you see is what you get, and what you hear about Giannis is true?
Oh yeah, I mean it was every night. Like we'd call it night school. We'd come back, after practice, after games. We'd come back. We'd shoot at night. We'd lift, play 1-on-1. I remember him and Jabari played 1-on-1. And, we're all talking trash, bickering back and forth. They're going at each other, calling tic-tac fouls, being soft. And then, we decided, like, hey, like, we're not calling no more fouls. Like, you just got to play through it. And that kind of messed me up because I'm the smallest one out of them two. So they start, lowering their shoulder into me. And I'm like, dang, did I mess up by saying no more foul calls? But, like, it just taught us to be, tough and to go through things and don't let the physicality stop us from, scoring the ball. And, at that moment when we were playing there, I was like, man, both of them at the time, I was like, man, these dudes are going to be unstoppable.
You spoke about, your perseverance for the league, and you detailed it in your Players Tribune article. I think it was great. Like anyone out there always loved the Players Tribune of seeing the athletes open up, and like you wrote it, you said your story. It wasn't just a physical toll. You mentioned the injuries to your body, but like the mental health battles that you had throughout the league. What was that like trying to figure that out? And it was before the resources are what we have today, where
Right.
you can speak open about it. Where it was where you were, 8-9 years ago, you can't be as open about therapy. You can't be as open about dealing with anxiety, depression, anything. So what was it like trying to navigate that and figure it out, and for you to finally find your solution where you felt better and you were treating yourself and looking out for yourself?
Yeah, man, it was a hard thing for me to do. Going through it, kind of not knowing what it was at the time, why I felt certain ways, understanding my anxiety, understanding what depression is. There was days where, I didn't even want to leave my bed. Like there was a lot of, hard days. But to put in the work, to, get my mind right, how I view life itself, my focus level, not relying on certain things to, be happy, figuring all those and getting those answers and kind of looking within myself and being like, what makes me happy, and how am I going to, make decisions and make choices in my life to benefit, kind of my happiness, without being detrimental to myself, right? Like, so I think, understanding those answers, finding out those answers, and, being able to, just understand myself. It was a long process, but, eventually getting on the other side, was great, and I felt, I felt like, once I figured that out for myself, I could kind of see it in other people, right? I could see that anxiety and I could see that depression, in other athletes. And I was like, man, like having these conversations with them, trying to help them out, it meant a lot to me, especially when I was able to get through to people.
Mm-hmm. What changed? Like, obviously there's going to therapy and taking those steps, but beyond that, like you could go to therapy once a week, you can go 7 days a week or once a month, but there's those changes you have to make every day and like all your choices. What changed for you that helped you a lot?
Well, I think, like I said, understanding myself, I think that, I would try to, make choices that would make myself happy in the moment. But then, I look back at those decisions, whether it's a week or a month from then, and I'm like, man, I didn't like that. Like, I just try to fill a void that I was feeling, right then and there. And that was, those thoughts were led by, anxiety or depression, and just trying to fix myself at the moment instead of taking the long route and being like, this isn't just an on and off switch where I can just, fix myself, in a day. It takes time. It takes effort. Like you said, it takes, some therapy. The therapy was big for me. Meditation, all the things that, I did to, really try to get help and understand, what was going on. It was life-changing for me.
Did you notice it? And you said it, you saw it in your teammates, you saw it in players. Once you got to the other side and, took care of your mental health and you were feeling better mentally, did you realize how you weren't the only one and how common it is for just across the NBA alone? Yeah,
and especially when I put out that Players Tribune article, there was so many people that reached out to me and were like, man, like I felt like I was writing this myself. Like, I've had all these feelings, and, so many people came up to me or DM'd me or wrote me, emailed me, or like, man, I have mental health issues, and, your article was special because I could relate. And even seeing other athletes go through it with my own eyes and me figuring it out, I still didn't know how much it affected, the amount of people that, reached out to me.
How important was it when you got to Orlando? That's what helped. How candid, how transparent were you able to be with like the franchise, the front office on what you were dealing with?
It was hard because, the league's a tricky thing, man. Like I didn't want to go in there and, I was new to the team. I just got there, but, the therapist on the team was big for me. And obviously everything that, between, me and the therapist is confidential, even with the team. So it was great that the organization provided that because that really helped me. And it's tough. It's tough to be open, right? Like, and at that time, I still wasn't comfortable with talking about it. But yeah, having him helped me a lot.